Let me tell you a little bit about Ken Blackwell. At least I assume you're out there to talk to, because I can't see a damn thing looking out this direction, except the clock, which is on 0. I guess it's time for me to sit down already. Ken Blackwell is a native Ohioan, has spent almost all his life in Ohio, except for some of his good government service in the first Bush administration. Got a football scholarship to college, passed up a career playing for the Dallas Cowboys in order to go back and teach college, because he figured out, I guess as I have, it beats work every day of the week. Mayor of Cincinnati, one of the last Republican mayors, am I correct? Worked in the senior Bush administration, came back to run for Congress, would have been a fantastic congressman, but he narrowly lost to the son of the previous congressman. That's a hard person to beat. And then, this is interesting, went off to be ambassador to the United Nations on the Human Rights Commission, which has to be interesting when you had countries like Libya under Muammar Gaddafi sitting on the Human Rights Commission. And then went back to a very successful political career in Ohio, state treasurer, Secretary of State of Ohio, national chairman of, I think, one of our favorite people, Steve Forbes' 2000 presidential campaign, and had the courage to speak out in Ohio against tax increases and against scandals even in his own party, and as a result became a reform candidate for governor in 2006. A horrible year, of course, to run as a Republican, but he did it, and he ran a very strong race. And I think people in Ohio perhaps understand that they probably should have elected him instead of the fellow they did. And then, this is interesting to me, became a fellow at the Harvard Institute of Politics. That must have been really interesting, both for him and for them. But he has also served on a number of boards. He's worked with the Heritage Foundation. He has written 3 books. The latest one, I think, really we should all go out and get, Resurgence, on how conservative, how constitutional conservatism can save America. And I think what he's going to tell us fits in with what most of us have been thinking for quite a while, and what I hope we will see come true in November. You know, I'm a historian, and one of the comments a famous historian made about the American Revolution one time is that it occurred because ultimately it became impossible for a corrupt administration to govern a morally aroused people. And we darn sure have a corrupt administration, and it's looking more and more as though we may have a very aroused electorate in November, and perhaps put the brakes on some of this. But enough of me. Here is Ken Blackwell, who a person said of him once, "Ronald Reagan is back, and this time he's black."
Thank you, Jim, for that generous introduction. I want to thank you all for being here this morning. I wish my mom and dad could be here to see this crowd in Pennsylvania to hear me speak. The reason I say that is because I don't know if you know what the great Mark Twain said about Cincinnati after his 7th visit. He was on a train ride out with a young reporter from the Louisville Carrier, and he was asked, "What's your impression of the Queen City of the Midwest?" He said, "Son, if I heard the world was ending tomorrow, I would get to Cincinnati as fast as I could, because things happened there 10 years after they happened in the rest of the world." We are genuinely a conservative people. But my mom and dad would be proud because, unlike Jim, I played football at the premier Catholic university, Xavier University. And we played the Quantico Marines annually. And in my junior year, a Marine sergeant gave me a physical education that was superior to the academic preparation that the Jesuits provided me in the classroom. So complete was the whooping that he put on me that day, that I spent the intervening year in chapel praying that he not be sent to Vietnam so I might repay him his kindness in my senior year. And for all of you skeptics and doubters, God answers prayer. Delivered him unto me. And for one complete half, I was putting the whooping back on him. At the beginning of the third quarter, a Marine fullback came through a hole that was made, and he was just there waiting for me to tackle. Instead of getting a clean shot with my shoulder, my head got in the way. I was knocked out. They sent me to Good Samaritan Hospital for a head x-ray. The x-ray came back negative. They sent me back to the field. 3 Jesuits met me at the sideline, laid hands on me, prayed, and sent me back into the game for the balance of the fourth quarter. After that, I got the most substantial headline in my athletic career for my mom and dad to read. It read, "Blackwell, head x-rays show nothing." So I'm delighted that you're here. But I thought that Mike picked up on something that I want to share with you. Because as I've studied throughout human history, political regimes and governments, models for governance, one of the things that I know that is clear as day, that all totalitarian regimes, all authoritarian regimes, all big welfare state regimes and governments have to, out of necessity, do 2 things that go at the heart of American exceptionalism. They have to weaken and destroy the family, and they have to silence the church. That is a common occurrence in those big government dictatorships and regimes. Nothing has changed. We have a president that doesn't understand the essence of American exceptionalism, but he understands the goal of big government, and the welfare state. And that is to create a dependency and a craving and a need for government largesse, so there becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of voters returning those who would rob the public treasury, to grow government and to multiply our dependence. So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think Congressman Kelly should have apologized for giving you stories out of his life of the importance of the lessons of his family members and his development, not only as an independent entrepreneur and business person, but as a person of individual conscience, because those things are right now under attack. And so I'm going to pick up on that. I had a great uncle that most of you have probably never heard of. His name was D. Hart Hubbard. He was the first black American to win an Olympic gold medal in track and field. He did that in the 24 games in Paris. That year and the preceding year, he had been in a transatlantic debate with another fellow by the name of Eric Liddell. There was this great debate as to which one of them was the fastest human being on the face of the earth. They were going to resolve that in Paris. But when my uncle got there, he had qualified for the 100, the high hurdles, and the broad jump. When he got there, he was told that the high hurdles and the 100-yard dash were white-only events, and he couldn't compete. As we all know, Eric Liddell chose not to compete in the finals in the 100-yard dash because the finals fell on the Sabbath. When my uncle got back to Ohio, he shared with my mom's generation what has become a watch theme for our family. He said that God, and he was quoting Anicius Bothias, a theologian, he said, God sometimes writes straight with crooked lines. He puts us in situations and he shows us a path, but he uses challenges to push us along and motivate us along that path. And so my uncle said that what he had learned was the greatest lesson of his life from Eric Liddell, and that was fidelity to faith. Fidelity to faith. And I want to underscore this with you because it is that fidelity to faith and principle that is so important. My family grew up a lower income family. My dad was a meat packer. My mom was a stay-home mom for the most part, but she had gone back after dropping out of high school to get a GED degree and to become a practical nurse. And she would do private practice just to help make economic ends meet. But she was principally a person that stayed at home, and she was a strict disciplinarian. My mom was so conservative that she believed that you spank your son once a day. You might not know why, but he surely would. I mean, she was so conservative that she came out of the W.C. Field School. She, in fact, said, look, there will be no premarital sex in this household because it might lead to slow dancing. That's how conservative she was. But she came, when Uncle DeHart gave her that, she said that her generation understood that it was something of great importance, greater than anything that she had missed in dropping out of high school. And she said between him and my grandmother, they became aware that the three most important books in life, in reverse order of importance, were your date book, your checkbook, and the good book. Your date book tells how you spend your time and with whom you spend it. The checkbook reflects how you manage your resources, no matter how abundant or meager. The good book keeps you on the path of conviction over the path of convenience. And so this hardworking, simple woman passed on a family tradition of fidelity to faith, and a grid by which you can evaluate the quality of your life. Now, my dad added a fourth book, and he and my mom argued as to whether or not it qualified as a book, and that was this book, the Constitution. My dad was a simple guy. He graduated from high school, but he too was a hard worker. Like I told you, he was a meat packer. And he said, look, and he's the first person I heard say this. He said, the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence is, in his estimate, the most important. He said, but the Declaration of Independence is the frame in which the Constitution rests. And he said that second paragraph of the Constitution, we hold these truths to be self-evident. He said, Ken, that's a very sophisticated way of saying any knucklehead should be able to get this. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. You know, we're not all equal in height, weight, color, intelligence, wealth. He said, but we're all equal in the investment of human dignity that God has invested in each of us. We're all fashioned in his image, and we're all accountable to his authority. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And this is the point that he used to make. Your human rights are not grants from government, they're gifts from God, and you, in fact, don't have to depend on any government to give you your human rights. Governments can only respect your human rights. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, in that order. It is very difficult. It is very difficult to enjoy liberty if you're dead. The first obligation of government and members of the human community is to protect life. Life in the womb and life in the most precious years of our life. You can't understand American exceptionalism if you don't understand that paragraph. Look, my dad came back from World War II like Congressman Kelly's dad. My dad said, look, America is not perfect, but it is perfectible. That was something that Lincoln said. You can engage in the shaping and the directing of the country, but you must engage. You cannot sit on the sidelines. You must be on the front lines of this social and political engagement. And that's what we're here to celebrate this 2 days. Your engagement in the process, you're being on the front line. You're not being on the sideline. You're understanding something that Lincoln said, and I saw this quote the other day, and I thought I would build on it. We, the people, are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution. We are in a fundamental battle of our lives. President Obama promised 5 days before his election in 2008 that he would fundamentally transform America. President Obama has been on a mission to do just that. It is not accidental, and he is not dumb. He is purposeful about the wrong thing. President Obama wants to transform our market economy into a government-controlled economy. He wants to transform our family-centered society to a government-centered society. But most fundamentally, he wants to transform our national philosophy founded upon the primacy of the individual and the supremacy of God to one founded upon the primacy of the collective good and the supremacy of the central or federal government. The only thing that stands in President Obama's way is the Constitution and what he wants to do by radically transforming our courts is to, in fact, permanently push aside the restraint of the Constitution on the expansion of government. Since Aristotle, we have, in fact, been fascinated with the tension between the organized power of the state and individual liberty. And there are some fundamental wooden-headed ideas that have grown up in the last century, but in an accelerated pace under President Obama. One is this notion of moral relativism. John, I was at Ohio University. I saw scribbled in a lounge, "God is dead, Nietzsche." I went back there a couple of months or half a year later. I saw that scratched out, and it said, "Nietzsche is dead, God." That is the struggle. You go right back to that second paragraph. The struggle between trying to convince us that government is the grantor of our human rights, not God. This whole notion that God is dead and the advance of moral relativism is one of the wooden-headed ideas. This whole notion that the government, not our families, our families are the incubators of liberty, essential to small government governance. When you destroy the family, you create an appetite for the expansion of government. Our problem is that we are approaching this, people say, forget the cultural issues. It's all about economics. Well, let me tell you, that's crazy. We are rapidly becoming a culture where earning money doesn't entitle you to it, but wanting money does. What is that? That's a cultural issue. That is a cultural issue. You cannot defend limited government and ignore the destruction of the family. You cannot talk about expanding economic growth when you in fact destroy the human potential to grow our economy, to create jobs and new ideas, when you murder millions and millions of Americans in the womb. It is a foolhardy notion for anyone to tell you that these things are separate. They are not. When you grow the government, you rapidly surpass the 19 things that this document says that in terms of enumerated powers, that the federal government is responsible for. You now have a national defense that is being funded out of discretionary aspects of the budget, when it is the fundamental responsibility of the federal government. What do we have? We have an effort to destroy the readiness of our military, not just in its size, but its readiness, by basically telling our cadets at the Air Force or at West Point that God has no place in their classroom and their training. That is a sure pathway to destruction. That is a sure pathway to expanding the power of government. That is a surefire way of sustaining the anemic economic growth and job creation that many of our speakers have talked about. Ladies and gentlemen, it is very, very clear that the most fundamental liberty in American history has been not economic liberty, but the liberty associated with free conscience. Religious liberty is the most basic liberty in the American Constitution. If you relegate that to a secondary issue, if you tell our leaders to walk away from it, you are supporting the expansion of government in our lives and over the governance of our economy. They go hand in hand. Anybody who says that they want to lead this party and lead this nation under the umbrella of American exceptionalism, but doesn't take a strong stand for religious liberty, is a phony. Look, at the end of the day, we have the capacity to bounce back. My family grew up a Bible-reading, Bible-believing family. And so I want to just share with you in my 5 remaining minutes something that I think helps guide me in any political station that I've held, and that is this. 3 things. One is in Hebrew 12, verse 1. There's a cloud of witnesses watching how we run the race that is marked out for us. Mike was right. They don't come down and run the race for us, but they watch. They invested in us. How we run the race. We can't run the race from the sidelines. Second point. Psalms 11, verse 3. If the foundation be destroyed, what will the righteous do? Look at that in a religious sense or a practical, secular sense. If those of us who believe in liberty sit on the sidelines, don't engage, there will be somebody to fill the vacuum. If the foundation be destroyed, and this, the foundation of American exceptionalism, the foundation of a notion of restrained government power and optimum individual liberty will be destroyed. The third thing, John 3, where we're told those who would like to do evil love the darkness. When I was coming up, I had one of those childhood diseases, the mumps, and my grandmother, who was a day worker for 4 families, brought me a book she had gotten from one of the families for whom she worked. She brought it to me, and I remember reading this novel as a 9-year-old. It was about a little boy who spent a good part of his childhood in the infirmary. One night, the nurse at dawn, the nurse came into his room, and he had his face plastered up against the window pane, and she said, "Little boy, what are you doing?" He said, "I am watching the man punch holes in the darkness." She said, "What?" He said, "I'm watching the man punch holes in the darkness." And so she went to the window and she looked out, and what the little boy was looking at was the lamplighter going down the street, lighting the street lights. And in this little boy's mind's eye, the man was punching holes in the darkness. The Obama administration does not want us to be engaged. The Obama administration does not want transparency as they try to destroy the constitutional restraints on big government. It is our job to light candles. Not spend a lot of time cursing the darkness, but to light candles with the individual talent that we each have. To light candles, to rush the darkness, to defend that foundation of American exceptionalism. We can do it at all levels. We can do it at state-based think tanks. We can do it with family policy councils, right-to-life organizations. We can do it with those activists in the Tea Party who understand the essence of American exceptionalism from an economic, social, religious, and political point of view. The issue here is whether or not we will light candles, we will be positive, we will push forth. Ladies and gentlemen, our country has come through great challenges before. The Great World Wars, the attack on our domestic land in 9/11. We've come through the great civil rights era. The question is, will we rise up now? when once again the essence of American exceptionalism is being challenged. We have the policies. The question is, do we have the will? And are we smart enough to understand within the framework of American democracy that means winning elections? We win elections at the precinct level. 1976, John knows Ford lost Ohio by 6,500 votes. The reality is this: that translated into less than 1 vote per precinct in the state of Ohio. The difference is that if we had gotten 13,000, 14,000 more votes in Ohio, we would have had President Ford, not President Carter. And we can just imagine the difference that would have meant for America at that point in time. We have a chance to get control of the Senate. We have a chance to regain the presidency, but it all starts now, and it starts with you. I ask that you defend the foundation, that you light candles, and you punch big holes in the darkness of our time. If we do that, we will in fact see America celebrate greatness and more greatness in America's third century. God bless you.